Good morning. This is Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. It is 10 o'clock, and this is a special meeting of the Jefferson Public Utility District Board of Commissioners. My name is Jeff Randall. I'm president of the board and calling the meeting to order. Jefferson PUD will be offering both virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. And if you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise a hand to request to speak. So let's do a roll call of commissioners. My name is Jeff Randall. I'm president of the board and commissioner for District 1.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner, District 2.
Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3.
Okay, and we have one item on our agenda. It's the 2024 audit presentation. I don't think we have any. Oh,
I do have manager's question real quick to start.
Okay, so we'll have a little manager's comment at the beginning of the meeting, if that's okay with commissioners. Other than that, can we have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of approving the modified agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So Kevin, you are up.
So real quick, on June 3rd, we would like to have a short executive session for about 30 minutes. We thought we would start at 3 and then be able to take a break at 4. If this works for the commissioners, great. If not, we would push the executive session to a different day. That is Tuesday, our regular scheduled board meeting.
So we would add an executive session before the regular 4 o'clock meeting, an hour-long session.
Probably a half hour is all we need.
Okay. Any objections to the June 3rd meeting starting at 3 instead of 4?
I'm good with that.
Okay. Sounds like you can advertise.
We'll post it then, and thank you. Save me from sending emails and if we were all available on that day.
Great. Okay. So Mike, are you taking it away on this one?
Yeah, I'll take it. We have Tyler Kennedy up here who is with BSGM, Bollinger, Seegers, Gilbert, and Moss. He's going to present on our 2024 financial audit to the board. We've already received the audit report. This is just the final presentation to the board, just so that way he can go over the results if you guys have any questions. And then we also do have a representative from the state auditor's office here as part of our agreement with them that they are here to participate in if they have any questions or anything with the exit conference too. So we just appreciate Tyler coming up here and giving this presentation, and just want to say thank you to all of the finance team for the hard work they do. They're here today too, just to kind of hear and see how things.
Can you introduce him, Mike?
Oh, yes. I have Melissa Blair, who is our financial services manager. Teresa Geis, who is an accounting associate. She handles most of our payroll stuff. Kathy Palmer, accounting associate. She does a lot of the AP stuff. And then Morgan Higgin, who is also an accounting associate and handles a lot of the AP stuff.
Thank you for being here. It's nice to see your faces.
So I'm going to go at this time, unless Kevin has something else. I'm going to use them.
We appreciate all you do. Thank you guys for coming down and working with us. This has been a great relationship.
I will go ahead and turn it over to Tyler and let him do his presentation.
I need a specific mic.
Nope.
Are we good?
Can hear you.
You have a real
Okay. Okay. Well, good morning. And for those of y'all who I didn't get a chance to greet as you came in, I'm Tyler Kennedy, work with BSGM. We're out of Lubbock, Texas. So kind of a long distance relationship with here at Jefferson County Public Utility District. But, the past 3 years have kind of flown by, but certainly learned a lot about kind of what's going on in the Northwest and power supply. And certainly it's been a fruitful experience for me as well. So thank you for the kind words to start, Kevin and Mike. With that, we'll get into this is a presentation that it kind of walks you through what we reported along with our audit. An audit involves kind of two facets. The way I break it down is controls and compliance is one facet, and the other portion of it is the financial statements, right? That's originally what we were hired to do, is make sure that you can rely upon the numbers in the financial statements. So we'll jump right into it. And obviously this is, you know, it's not just me only. So if you have questions along the way, I'd be happy to and answer them if I can, any questions that you may have. So I'm starting with the finances. This is kind of a quick look at kind of where you've been and where you are now. And probably the, you know, the next set of 8 to 9 graphs are kind of all speaking towards the same thing is what are the financials showing to us on a year-to-year perspective that's going on here at the utility district in Jefferson County. And so looking at this graph, we have two things that are really presented. We have our cash from operations. So how many dollars are our rates producing on an annualized basis? And then what are we using those rate dollars for? And so starting back in the first year on this graph, moving forward to 2024, you can see that our total annualized revenues for the district were just shy of $11 million. And in 2024, we were just $15 million. And this is operating cash. So, you know, this is what your rates are producing. And as a part of the rate study that ended in 2024, there was a portion of your rate base that was really intended to finance our construction that we needed to do our 4-year work plan here at Jefferson County Public Utility District. And as you can see down there from the graphs in green, some really heavy investments that we're making into our utility system, broadband system, and other systems here that the district is operating, just shy of $15 million invested for 2024's audit. So the cash that you're generating is really going back into and investing in your plan, at least in 2024, and for most of the years that are presented without 2023.
And Tyler, I'm not quite clear on this. It looks like there's supposed to be 3
Yes.
pillars.
So cash from investments is just really not enough to make it onto the graph.
Okay.
It's under $1 million, so it wouldn't ever have. And so that's really be, you know, return on investments or interest income.
Got
And when
it.
you're comparing it to the larger buckets, it really doesn't make it onto the graph, but it is something we take into account when we're making that from our 3 buckets of cash.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. Acquisition and construction of capital assets, you know, that's kind of the theme, growth, reinvestment, broadband build outs here at Jefferson County Public Utility District. And as you can see, you know, as your rates were designed and as you were really looking forward to the cash that you needed to invest into your system without drawing down long-term debt to finance those assets, we do have grants that are coming in substantially here at the utility district, but substantial investments, just over $16 million on the acquisition and construction capital assets in 2024's audit. And so I think, you know, if I had to build a theme from the first year that we were here, we were pretty slow in what we were doing to the utility system. But as this broadband programs in the last couple of years have really got off the ground and are being completed and worked on for the grants that you have, you can see there's just substantial amounts of dollars for the utility district of your size that are kind of going out there on the line to make sure that the power works, the poles can hold the broadband system. So substantial. So this is just a look at, so we've looked at kind of your operating cash flows, what you're investing into your plant. These are 2 pie charts that look at the expense side or the income statement side of what we're doing here at the utility district. And the thing that I would tell you is it's quite flat. The inflation around your expenses is really hitting all areas equally. The one thing that I would say is for 2024, if you look at the cost of power and water broadband area, you can see that we are down 2% from 2023. And that's really because we're picking up, and as you would expect, as we invest in our plant, we're picking up a lot of depreciation and amortization. So if you're looking at the 2 charts side by side, you can really see that we're really seeing some pretty significant growth in the depreciation and amortization here at the utility district that, you know, rates as you move into the future are going to have to overcome this additional deferred expense that you have hanging out there related to your investments into your utility and broadband and water systems here at the utility district. But other than that, A&G and operations and maintenance are really what I would consider flat on a year-to-year perspective. Even with, employee raises really being the single most across the nation, benefits, wages, and keeping up with cost of living has really been the most significant fluctuator on a year-to-year basis. It just kind of has been held steady by the cost of power and the depreciation and amortization increases that we saw here at the utility district in 2024. So as we invest in our plant, and I've mentioned several times so far, one of the things that are the rates here at the utility district were designed to do was finance at least electric plant investment. And one of the things we're looking at to monitor that is interest as a percentage of long-term debt. And you can see that we're still steady with just under 3% in interest expense compared to your long-term debt balances. And it's really what you would expect when the majority or the bulk of your long-term debt is low interest debt from FFB or US. Interest as a percentage of revenue. So interest expense has been steady. And as we see our revenues go up, specifically including grant revenues here at the utility district, this is really an inverse relationship as interest has been steady throughout the life of our tenure here at the utility district. Electric revenue per customer. So I know we've talked about the rates are designed to finance capital investments. One of the things that we're also monitoring, or one of the unique measurements that we're really focused on, is our average annual electricities per customer. And as you can see, so that's what a customer on average would be billed in 1 year, just shy of $2,100, between $2,000 and $2,100 per electric customer per year. And as you can see, it's quite flat, really, even though revenues are increased over the life. And really, when we're saying total revenues are increased, that's really because we're including a lot of grant revenue that's really helping the fiber build outs and the things that you're doing that are related to grant revenues that you can get from the state of Washington and the federal government here at the utility district. So really not a significant change in the impact of that. And that's something we look at and I think is important to know. Is that's quite flat over the 4 years, other than when our rates went into effect in the 2021 year. Bad debt is expense of percentage sales. So also here at the utility district, y'all certainly experience something that we don't see really throughout our other 100 utility electric audits that we do, is that bad debt expense is really just your customers are paying their bills is generally what it would appear to us from our tests and the dollars that needed to be allowed for each year. It's just over the 3 years, other than coming out of COVID, there hasn't been a lot there to be written off from the utility billing side.
And are you saying that that's unusual?
Yeah, that's quite unusual. Yeah. For it to be zero and your allowance to still be representative of your net collectible AR.
Okay.
Without having bad debt expenses.
Other utilities have a higher, typically
Yes,
have more
certainly.
customers who are not paying their bills.
Yes, I would say that that's true. And certainly y'all's tariff includes more rate design that is aimed amongst your customer base to make sure that they can meet the requirements to have electricity at their house that we may not have across our other electric utility base. But really, for it to be zero the last few years and your net AR to be representative, I would say is a pretty good sign that the dollars you're billing are collectible. So on a year-to-year basis.
And since we've got you here and you have insights to other utilities, so do a lot of other utilities not have like the low income assistance that we have?
That would be, that was kind of what I was alluding to, is that that's kind of I haven't seen it really be implemented. It's one of the things that I've taken with me. We learn together, right? What's going on in the Pacific Northwest is I think some of the co-ops and electric utilities we do could certainly benefit from a rate structure that included something like that.
Interesting.
Really what
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm kind of surprised to see this chart because not infrequently we have a report from Mike about debts that have to be written off. And to see this as for the last 3 years as less than, as effectively zero, surprises me, and I'll be interested to hear what Gene has to say.
Go ahead, Gene.
So a lot of this has to do with our collection practices, right? We have a longer collection cycle than other utilities. Electric is and water, 56 days. Plus, shut off isn't our go-to. Before we shut anybody off, we have CSRs and Drew working with our customers. We allow payment arrangements. My philosophy through customer service has always been to keep the power on and to find ways to help folks pay for it rather than turning it off and just trying to collect the debt. We're a utility business. We want to sell power, and we're public. We want to serve our community. So a lot of this ratio here can be described by our, I mean, it's due to our values and how we work with our customers.
Great summary, Gene. And having watched the PUD since we started the power operations, it's really cool to see the evolution of that culture and those values. So thanks for that little summary.
Well, and I'd like to add just one thing to this, and I think this is something Tyler and I have talked about, is during COVID, we built up a big allowance for uncollectible, for bad debt.
Mhm.
Even, well, during COVID and even prior to COVID. And so we had too much compared to the write-offs that we were actually having. Our allowances that we were allowing for it, we had a lot more allowance than what we needed. So that's part of the reason too we haven't had that bad debt expense, is because our allowances have been up there, and the amount that we've written off has not matched what we were allowing for bad debt.
And when you say allowances, I'm not quite sure what that means.
Budget set aside,
Well, yeah, so
carve out.
we used to on a monthly basis record an allowance for bad debt, trying to estimate about how much we thought we were going to have in bad debt.
Okay.
So we were allowing that, we were accounting for that on our balance sheet.
Okay.
And kind of pre-writing off some of those balances. And it was getting up there where we were not matching our actual write-offs, were not matching what our estimate was.
Okay.
And
We were
that was
estimating
partially-
we were going to have more bad debt than we actually ended up having.
Yeah, so we had a high allowance, so we've been.
But I would follow it up with 3 years later, even our folks that were high in COVID are already accruing again for their annualized bad debts as you would see them. And to speak to Kenneth's point, there's certainly a list that comes to y'all to be written off monthly, but there's also offsetting amounts that you receive for folks who were bad debts that need their power turned back on. And so there's offsetting amounts. So when we're talking about the expense, it's the culmination of a lot of those things.
Okay.
What are we estimating? But in order to raise our uncollectible status, we would have to have an expense into the income statement. And so far, you've had no expense related to bad debts that have passed through to your bottom line in 3 years.
Okay.
And I think it's still representative of the fact that you were probably a little high during COVID, but certainly that the customers are paying their bills here at Jefferson County Public Utility District.
Okay. Thank you.
So just a quick look, as we talked about, what you're using the funds that you're deriving from your rates for. We've talked about interest expense. Just kind of a quick look at electric revenue per kWh sold and power cost per kWh sold. So for an electric utility that doesn't have what we call a power cost pass-through, where we directly collect all of our power costs directly from our members through a mechanism in our tariff. One of the things that you can see is volatility from not having a mechanism like that in your tariff. And unless apparently you're with Bonneville Power Association. So, any negative impacts to your net margins that are unforeseen or you can't budget or plan for, that's hard when you have plans or budgets that you're trying to operate within at any electric utility. But one of the things that I would point out here is that we've been quite steady in our electric revenue per kWh sold. So if we took all of our electric revenue dollars, every kWh we sold, we're just north of 10 cents per kWh, which is nationally a very competitive rate. I mean, that's extremely competitive. So in the town I live in, Lubbock, Texas, we just went competitive. So we got rid of our some people, we had a city that was running the electric entity, and the city voted to no longer do that. And we went to the open market, and it was 17 cents all in to be able to have an electric bill. So really competitive, I would say, being around the 10-cent mark on electric revenue per kWh sold. And as you can see, we're still hanging out around 4 cents at our cost of power per kWh sold. And so just putting that into perspective for you across our 100 customers base that we have that are electric utilities, we have some that are up around 7 cents, and they're in a generation and transmission cooperative environment. And so, they can't do anything. They got to collect those dollars from their members, So when you're starting at 7 cents versus 4 cents, it really makes a difference on that top number that we're looking at there. Really competitive rates from the wholesale side. So I think that certainly makes business go a little bit easier when we're hanging out around 4 cents.
It's good to hear that perspective and remember that we're fortunate to have
the hydro and the
power.
and the things that Bonneville has done to make sure that it's steady and affordable. It certainly seems like it's working here for the utility district. And certainly I hope that it falls in line with y'all's expectations, but that's certainly what we see when we're doing our scheduling and reviewing and analytics.
Okay.
I think this has been kind of the comment and the conversation for years, since the last 3 years anyways, is our net position is growing substantially here at the utility district, and it will continue as long as we're in the grant period here to build out our fiber. And the reason is because under generally accepted accounting principles, which are promulgated by GASB. So if you compare your numbers to folks that are cooperative, they're going to be under FASB. So we got two different bases of accounting. Under GASB, we recognize all revenues when we earn or receive them. We don't defer those dollars, those grant dollars, to offset our depreciation. And so we've really seen this substantial growth up to about $95 million of net position, starting at just shy of 60 million 4 years ago. And most of that is related to the grant and the fiber build out projects that we're doing here at the utility district. So when you see those numbers, you kind of got to take it with a grain of salt. I would just keep that in mind when you're looking at those numbers, is that's really related to getting grant funds.
Yeah, because it's you're front loading. Sooner or later, you come back around to the other side of this.
It's a curve. It's a curve. That's exactly right. So we're going to have years of depreciation here at the utility district for which we're not recognizing
The
revenue.
bills come due.
That's right. That's exactly right. So you would see that net position come down as we went further into the life of that plan as it's being.
As it gets older.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. So, I think that was kind of the financial information. Some other notes that I would really tell you about doing our audit this year is, so if you're looking through the audit report, the bound copy that we sent to you all, one of the things we thought was needed and had to be done this year is to break out the broadband operations. And so when you look through the notes to the financial statements, one of the things you would see is a balance sheet, an income statement, and a cash flow for the broadband. And that's a change from prior years. But when I was reviewing the audit report, I thought we were lacking information that the average readers of the financial statements would want to have. And so I thought that we should go ahead and do that. So in 2024's audit report, that's a newer, or it's a change. It's those numbers were really being operated in the electric fund until this year, and we've made that full break. And so as we move forward, I would hope, even if it wasn't us here, that you would see those broadband numbers where you can
Right.
get a kind of a look at what it's doing each year.
And the commissioners have expressed support for that. So
Okay.
we've provided that direction to staff also. So
Yeah, so it's good to start seeing results on, we're making all of these investments. How is it doing, right?
Mhm.
And so I would expect as long as we're here, that note would include information to where you could derive how is it doing, just
On its
by
own.
Yeah, on its own by
Yep.
reading the financial statements.
Yep. Okay.
And so that was really the only financial statement or financial reporting change that I would report to y'all for 2024's audit. And then I kind of have a list of what we're still, we've had projects. I showed up out here and we kind of started with work orders. We worked through migrating cash over from the county to the utility district in-house and maintaining controls and so that those processes are secure, just as they have always been with the county, although you're handling all of that here, the treasury fund.
This is the being the treasurer for ourselves.
For yourselves, that's exactly right. So I have a kind of a list of our ongoing things that we're working on, kind of at the bottom. So just to start off, you hired us. I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but if I were to tell you, we give you a clean or unmodified opinion based on our opinion letter in the audit report for 2024's audit. And that audit opinion was issued on March 24th of 2025. And so the big deal being is that report's due to our USFFB by March 31st of each year. And so we try to have that to them along with your final Form 7 in the time frame that y'all required of us when we became the auditor here for the utility district. Along with the audit report, we also issue several different letters. The first of those would be what we call the internal control letter. And in this internal control letter, we have two areas. We're talking about specifically controls and specifically compliance. And so we have a few caveats, so I would cover our caveats with you. In this letter, the caveats would be is we don't look at every control here at the utility district. That's not what we can do as a part of an audit that revolves around sampling and testing. What we can do is focus on things that are important to how you run things here at this specific utility district, whether it's spending extra time around cash controls to make sure that we have things there that are secure and producing good transactions, or looking at policies that you have in place around capitalization, bad debts, things of that nature. We can't look at everything, but the things we do look at, we are required to give you some feedback on. And so with that being said, we have no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies identified for the 2024 audit. And those also fall into two separate buckets. Significant deficiency is a little bit lower of a reportable finding, and a material weakness is probably the worst of the two findings that we could report. A material weakness is defined as a control that would produce a material misstatement in a short amount of time. So it would be, something that's working so poorly that you couldn't get good financial data with this control in place. So we have none of those to report. And then a significant deficiency is defined a little bit more vaguely, but it would be a control or set of controls that produce a material misstatement in a reasonable amount of time. So a control that's not working, where when we showed up, we're having to do a lot of work to get the financials in order to produce a clean opinion on them. And so none of those reported for 2024's audit. And then compliance, we also have no findings to report to you. And the things we're focused on there is contracts and compliance that affect the audit. Specifically, where we've been spending a lot of time is grant contracts and grant compliance and the things we're doing there for the utility district. So that's one of our letters. The second letter is our letter directly to you all, and it's really in a separate bound letter. And this letter includes things we want y'all to focus on when you read the financial statements, as well as communications related to our audit. And so in this letter, we cover disagreements with management, journal entries that we're having to make as a part of our audit procedures, accounting policy changes that affect the financial statements and things of that nature. So I would tell you, there's no accounting standard changes for 2024. We did add in the broadband. I covered that, and that's something that you should see in that letter. We didn't have any disagreements with management on how we should be processing transactions here at the utility district. As a matter of fact, they've always been quite open to the things that I've always recommended as a part of my audit procedures. We try to be reasonable in the things we demand, but certainly, if it's not working right, we would like it changed, and we've always voiced that as a part of our audit procedures. And then I think kind of the capstone of that is I really want to make sure that we're all on the same page, is that, you know, overall, the utility district has a really set of robust controls in place to make record keeping easy and facilitative here, whether it's through imaging, the use of Doc Vault, the approval process inside of NISC that y'all are currently using. We think that overall the utility district here, the records are in good to great shape. You know, we certainly have things that we recommended and are working on, and I'll get to those, but we think that the records are in good shape, just to tell you plainly. So that would be kind of we would hope that's what you would take away from reading the letter.
Okay.
Non-attest services. So I think anytime you hire somebody to give you an opinion on things, you want to know, do we have conflicts of interest? Is there anything they're doing to where it would impair their ability to give you a clean opinion that's free from bias? And so one of the things I've disclosed to you, and I will continue to disclose to you, is that we do draft the financial statements for management here at the utility district. We provide the draft, y'all review the draft amongst yourselves, and y'all give us back that draft with your comments. And we make those changes. It's your audit report, it's not our audit report, it's y'all's. And so we are still doing that for you, but we have no other conflicts of interest that we think we need to divulge here to the board. And if we did, certainly we wouldn't do the audit anyways. And then our kind of list of ongoing recommendations, conversations from the audit. I left this on here, the bank reconciliation. We're still working through that. I think we're in a really good spot at the end of this year's audit, and I think it will be something we're not even talking about as we move forward into the future. I think that the utility district has it under control, and that process is being kind of, it has been beat, and the controls and process there would be sound whether or not BSGM was the auditor. So we have a new LUD, Shine Plat LUD number 17.
Yeah.
And so the accounting, and so one of the communications and conversations we've had as a part of the audit is, how do we account for this? When do we recognize the revenue? When do we bill the customers for Shine Plat? How long do we bill the customers? Should it be in line with the long-term debt that we have issued for that LUD? And so we're working on all of that, and I think that they're in a good spot to be able to do those billings and maintain those billings, even though the county was doing that for you previously. So that's another one of the things that you've taken.
Question for Mike on that, refresh my memory. They were able to, some of the customers were able to buy out up front on that, right? And then some could finance. So do we have a balance as to a number? It's not critical.
Most of them, so yes, so last October, they could prepay without any interest. There was only, we didn't have very many that actually took advantage of that. Most of them will be billed out.
Okay.
I think, yeah, it was only like 2 or 3 that I think that.
So then basically the cost of the project is going to get amortized out or depreciated out.
Yeah, they will get.
It wasn't enough to bring the number down substantially.
No, most of them will be billed out over the life of the debt that we have for it.
Okay, one of the projects we have been working on had a financial impact on you for 2024's audit is the accelerated meter depreciation project. So keeping our eye on where the old meters are, where they need to be when we get new meters, and how do we transition from having those old meters being depreciated to having our new meters in plant and being depreciated.
So again, maybe staff explain that a little better. We have 20,000 meters and we replaced them. We had what, $5 million for the project to do that over 24 years or whatever. So why 1.6 million in 2024?
So what we had to do was the old meters, the meters that we were replacing, we went ahead, they weren't fully depreciated. So we,
really?
based on,
Do we even have enough data to know what the depreciation schedule would be?
Because
So we
I
didn't know
thought the
how-
meters were outdated was the reason for the transfer over to the new meters, so.
the depreciation rate that we were using, they were not, at the time when they were first set up, we're not depreciating out enough things. So we accelerated that depreciation. So that way, when we do retire those meters, we're not taking a big loss.
So how long of a schedule are you projecting? If it's 1.6 in 2024, what would we expect in upcoming audits year over year over year? If that number should come
Oh,
down?
So, yeah, so we won't we did it in 2024 for the accelerated meter depreciation. This is for the old meters.
Mhm.
Right, no, I
Uh,
understand that.
But going forward, that you will not see that. We decreased the useful life of them. So which increased the actual, this was an additional depreciation amount that we had to enter.
So this was a one-time true up against the old meters
Yeah,
that
this
hadn't
was
been
a-
fully
yeah.
depreciated out.
Yeah, this was just a
Okay.
one-time true up. Then we adjusted the depreciation rate, but this was so we don't take a big loss on when we do retire all those meters out.
And it's pretty much only meters that were really, meters are really the only thing on your system where you know when you change out all of them.
Mhm.
And so all of the net book value of the old one needs to go away.
Mhm.
And so you really end up with two options. You can take a loss on the retirement of the old meters, or you can accelerate those the depreciation on those until they get to zero, at which point you would have no further impacts financially
Right.
from retiring those meters.
Right. And I presume that the whole thing is kind of unique because we bought the utility. We haven't been taking care of those meters over time. We just inherited them. It's like we bought this utility, that's part of it. And now we realize we got to replace all of them and they got to go. And okay.
So one other quick question then for staff too. I mean, obviously, I'm assuming that that number takes into account water and electric meters. So we will see something for the water then, because I'm assuming water's behind
No, so the
on meter
water,
replacement.
no, because we haven't, right now, we don't have a project in place to do do a replacement water meter project. That one, if we ever decided to upgrade and replace all the water meters, then yes, you would see something like that. This $1.6 million was just for the electric meters.
The
So,
water
but if we-
meters, we've been dealing with that forever.
Yeah,
So
forever.
we're more familiar with that system. We're more comfortable with how
Yeah,
it works.
those have been updated. I mean, we haven't done a wide spread
Right.
upgrade project on those. They've been upgraded as they have failed.
It's been maintained over time, and the whole PSE thing was that third party meter reading deal. It was just a kind of a mess that we finally
Yeah.
divorced ourselves from and said we're done and out of it.
So that 1.6 million was just on the electric side,
Got
but
it.
yeah, if we ever chose to do a water one through whether it's Tyler and BSGM or whoever the auditor is at that time, could potentially recommend that we do another acceleration
Okay.
for them.
And it's all non-cash expense, but it's just something that is deferred recognition,
Mhm.
so, and on the new meters, so pretty much digital meters, I think industry-wide, somewhere between 10 and 15 years on the depreciation rate is kind of where we're ending up.
Mhm.
With the 10 being a little bit more conservative, so you don't have to you can plan easier, right, with your rates.
Right.
On the shorter side, because you don't have something like this happen at the end of their life when you're switching from analog to digital.
Right.
And then
So you mentioned something there. Again, I think we borrowed that money. It's probably down to 22 years now. And you're saying we're depreciating over 10 or 15. Is that something that staff needs to take into account, that we need to look at that gap between the amount of time it's going to take to pay off the original funding versus the time those things are zeroed out for being depreciated? I mean, is that going to create a problem for us 15 years from now? May not be this board's issue, but it could be somebody's issue.
No, it won't create an issue. It's just because there's a little bit of difference, yes, between the term of the loan and the life of the asset that you borrowed it against. But they don't necessarily, because we also borrowed against the building. So part of that loan that we did went against the building. So they had RUS, when they looked at the term of the loan, they looked at the life expectancy of both the building and the meters, not just one portion of it. It's how they base the term of the loan.
Okay.
And then lastly, it's creating the schedule of expenditures board is still taking us a little bit of time. We're done with most of the audit. We would recommend there be a practice to use MR or something of that nature to start booking receivables related to the grants. But overall, the A19s, we got them, probably a month quicker this year. So we're pretty happy with where that process is as far as getting the grants tied out. But it's still a process with some changes that are happening after we get some of those numbers, but we're able to work through it to get to your receivable amount for your A19s to a spot we're all comfortable with. It's something we're still working on. And then lastly, and one of the things I'm focused on with this visit is just timekeeping, how we're coding time, whether we're charging it to construction expense,
Right.
retirement, and what are the impacts of that. Just kind of keeping focused on that here at the utility district.
And that doesn't sound like a new topic. It seems like something we've been working on forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and continue to try and work on.
And I would tell you, every utility district.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say that's a nationwide issue, but something we
You can't just do something. You got to tell us what you did and where you did and which category it's in. You can't just do
have
your
a
work.
bunch of work orders open. It's a little bit complex. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I think that was the information I wanted to go through with you and communicate to you all. Certainly, there's a lot of information in the bound audit report.
Right.
Questions, concerns,
Yeah.
comments?
Commissioners have any questions or comments? Seeing none.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and thank you for the continued work. And I think it's, from my perspective, it's really interesting to see these presentations and the take you have on different categories and the perspective you're able to bring by sharing, here's how you're different or alike other utilities. I think it's really helpful to have some outside eyes. And it sounds like you have kind of an ongoing working relationship with staff where it's not just at audit time that you're interacting with our staff. It's kind of a continuing relationship. So it sounds like it's been helpful.
We try to be available for questions throughout the year.
Yep. Mike, you and your team, you have anything to add to any of
I
that?
do have one more thing. I forgot to introduce one member of the team that's not here. She's not here. She could make it today. But Amanda Isaac, who is our accounting specialist, she does the work orders and she helps with the treasury portion of the cash management side of things. And yeah, it's just been, with Tyler and his team up here, we've had a good relationship. It's been, it's a good transition. They've actually helped quite a bit, help us understand a little bit better, things especially as we took over the treasury duties, things that we need to look at, things that we need to think about. So, I think we all learn from him every time he's up here. It's been great having him and his team up here. He's going to do some training this afternoon for some of our staff today, which should help with that understanding a little bit better as to why they need to accurately report their time. So that way, because it does affect our rates. And so there are those opportunities that, we appreciate him coming up here and willing to sit down and talk to us and go over everything with us. So.
Well, I think that's an opportunity for employees that maybe don't have much connection to the budget or understand these different buckets that we're measuring things in to share some of that. It's part of what we do, and sharing why we do it and how those numbers are used. I think there's an educational opportunity there. Well, I just want to say, since we've got all of you guys here, ladies, really appreciate the work you do. And it probably predates you, but back in the bad old days when we couldn't pass our audits, it was no fun being, I was sitting in the audience watching the commissioners at that point, but there's an old saying that you can't manage what you don't measure. And the numbers and everything that you're doing is super important to when we're looking at budgets and everything else. So your work is appreciated. Everybody at the PED does important work, but the numbers that we feel like we can rely on the numbers, and that speaks to your professionalism and detail to the work. So it's very much appreciated. All right. Well, anything else for anybody? Go to the other, any other comments? Seeing none. Did you ladies want to say anything? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mike. And so it's 10:46 and our work is done and the meeting is hereby adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.